What if the absolute worst thing that could possibly happen to your career is suddenly getting total freedom?
Oh, man. That is a terrifying thought for a lot of people.
Right, but just think about it for a second. Like, have you ever had that incredibly disorienting feeling where a major life transition hits, and instead of feeling liberated, you suddenly have absolutely no idea what you're supposed to do next?
Yeah, it's like this massive psychological whiplash.
Exactly. Like maybe it's a huge career shift, or, maybe you're suddenly facing an empty nest because the kids just moved out. Or perhaps you get handed an unexpected, totally unasked for early retirement.
Which happens all the time, actually.
It does, and you step off this high-speed treadmill of daily obligations that has defined your entire life for decades, right?
Right.
And you have all this sudden freedom, and you realize you've, temporarily forgotten how to just walk outside.
Because you spend years, sometimes decades, letting your schedule or your boss or your family responsibilities completely dictate your purpose.
Yeah, your calendar tells you who you are.
Literally.
Yeah.
And when those structures just vanish overnight, the silence isn't peaceful. It's deafening.
And that is the exact tension we are exploring in today's deep dive. We're looking at this fascinating document titled Pathway to Purpose.
Which is a great read, by the way.
It really is. And, if you are listening to this, you've probably read your fair share of generic self-help guides. But this isn't that. This is a highly specific, biblically inspired devotional framework.
It's very structured.
Extremely structured. It's designed to align a person's life stages with a higher purpose, making sure that literally no season of your life is wasted.
And that's a bold claim.
It is. So our mission today is to extract the actual mechanics of this framework. We want you to be able to apply it to your own life and navigate those dizzying transitions without feeling, completely paralyzed. So, okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it. So the foundational premise of this text is anchored in a specific biblical verse.
Okay.
It's Psalm 37.4. It says, "Delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart." And what makes this framework unique is how it actually uses that verse.
Because usually people treat that as a very passive thing.
Exactly. They treat it as this passive promise where you just sit around waiting for a calling to drop from the sky.
Mm-hmm.
But the text uses it as a catalyst for a really active methodology. It demands proactive, structured discovery of what you're actually meant to do next.
Right. And to ground this in reality, the text gives us two very different, but honestly incredibly relatable scenarios.
Oh, the Jim and the Timo and Tonia story.
Yes. So first, there's Jim. Jim is 61 years old, and he just got unexpectedly let go. His company offered him an early retirement package.
Which is basically a nice way of saying you're done.
Right. So picture Jim. He's standing at his own forced retirement party, holding a paper plate and sheet cake, listening to people congratulate him, and internally he is just spiraling into a void.
Yeah, he's completely lost.
But then the author of the text actually intervenes here and reframes this terrifying blank slate for Jim, calling it the freedom years.
I love that phrase.
Me too. He tells Jim he's finally free from the paycheck, free to take risks, free to actually dream.
Which, sounds like a beautiful, liberating reframe on paper.
Sure.
But it contrasts so sharply with the other example the text provides, which is Timo and Tonia.
Oh, right, the empty nesters.
Yeah, they're 51, recent empty nesters. They just uprooted their entire lives and relocated to Toronto to care for their aging parents.
That's a huge transition.
Massive.
Yeah.
And they find this vibrant new church community they love, and they desperately want to engage, volunteer, find a new purpose there.
Yeah.
But they are completely paralyzed by fear.
Because they don't want to get sucked back in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They've experienced the dark side of being overly busy in their past careers, and they're terrified of overextending themselves, saying yes to too much, and just burning out all over again.
Mm-hmm. So on one hand, Jim is drowning in an empty calendar, and then Timo and Tonia are terrified of filling theirs.
Yeah. These two stories perfectly represent the twin fears of any major life transition.
Yeah.
On one side, you have the terror of having absolutely no purpose, which is Jim staring into the abyss of retirement.
Right.
And on the other side, you have the fear of a purpose completely consuming and destroying your personal life, which is what Timo and Tonia are guarding against.
Wow, yeah.
But both of these fears result in the exact same outcome, which is total paralysis.
Okay, but hold on. Because it's really easy to just walk up to someone who lost their job and slap a bumper sticker on it saying, hey, welcome to the freedom years. Dream big.
Yeah, that doesn't actually help.
No. When you are sitting at your kitchen table staring at a blank piece of paper,
Mm.
how do you actually pick a direction? The sheer volume of possibilities is what causes the paralysis. Where do you even draw the first line?
Well, the framework anticipates that exact paralysis. It moves away from all the abstract theory into a highly actionable internal audit.
Okay, an audit.
Yeah. The core argument here is that to find the path forward, you first have to look backward. They call this initial phase a walk down memory lane.
And reading through the source, this isn't just like fondly reminiscing about the good old days with a cup of coffee.
Not at all.
The text instructs you to physically sit down in a quiet space, open a blank journal, and do a complete, unfiltered memory dump. You're supposed to write down every past role, every major task, every relationship you've had since childhood.
And the crucial mechanism here is that you must do this without any judgment.
Right, no editing.
Exactly. You don't filter out the bad jobs or the weird hobbies. You just get the raw historical data of your life onto the page. You're gathering the raw materials of your history.
Because if you edit, you lose the data.
Right. If you start judging those memories while you write them, your brain will automatically filter out the very clues you're actually looking for.
That makes a lot of sense.
So once you have that massive, messy list, you move to the next phase, which is called Delight Your Heart. And this is where you apply a very rigid 3-tier grading system to that raw data.
Okay, break that down for us.
So you review your list and you assign a number to every single memory. A 1 goes to memories that brought you genuine, deep joy, delight, or fulfillment.
Okay, the good stuff.
Right. Then a 3 goes to memories associated with intense pain, discomfort, or distance. And then a 2 is given to literally everything else.
Yeah.
The neutral, mundane, just paying the bills moments.
You know, when I was reading this section, my mind immediately went to Marie Kondo.
Oh, that's a perfect comparison.
It's literally Marie Kondo for your memories. But instead of holding up a wool sweater to see if it sparks joy in your closet, you're auditing your historical resume to see what actually sparked joy in your lived experience.
Exactly.
Let's make this concrete for the listener, though. Imagine you're doing this audit right now. Let's say one of the memories I write down is organizing the neighborhood charity 5K. How do I grade that?
Well, you couldn't just grade the whole thing as one big block. You would have to break that broad memory down into its specific components to find the true grade.
Oh, okay.
So the actual day of the race,
Mm-hmm.
watching people cross the finish line and feeling that community spirit, that might be a definitive 1 for you.
Yeah.
Genuine joy.
Right, the fun part.
But the months spent fighting with the city council for street permits, that might be a hard 3. Deep discomfort and stress.
Oh, yeah. That's a 3 for sure.
And then the hours spent color-coding the volunteer spreadsheet. That could just be a 2. You were functionally competent at it, but it didn't really light you up.
Breaking it down like that really highlights a massive trap the text points out. It's the danger of the 2s.
Oh, the 2s are dangerous.
Because so many people build their entire lives and careers around their 2s. Like, you're good at spreadsheets, so you become an accountant, it pays the bills, you're functionally competent, but 20 years later you feel completely empty because there's just no delight there.
And that cognitive shift is the genius of the grading system. By isolating the 1s, you are excavating the actual clues to your innate God-given talents. Research consistently shows that the activities bringing you the greatest joy are incredibly strong indicators of your natural strengths.
But the framework is clear that you can't just stop at what makes you happy, right? Like, finding your joy isn't the finish line, it's just the starting line.
Precisely.
There is a powerful quote in the source from Dr. Henry Blackaby. He says, "If you want to experience God, look for where he is working and join him."
Yeah, that's a core concept here.
And the document includes these visual maps of the kingdom. One map lists massive global and local issues, things like aging populations, addiction, homelessness, corruption.
The real world needs.
Right. And the other map shows specific roles like catalyst, builder, pioneer, empathizer.
The framework argues that true vision is found at the intersection of those maps. It's exactly where your 1s, your deepest, most joyful strengths, intersect with a broader, painful need in the world.
So you don't have to just invent a purpose out of thin air.
No, not at all. You match your historical joy to a current crisis.
Okay, so you've audited your past, you've mapped your joy to a real-world need, you have this spark of a vision. But a vision operating in a vacuum dies pretty quickly.
It really does.
So here's where it gets really interesting. The framework completely pivots here. It shifts from this deep internal excavation to external architecture, because you cannot build a purpose alone.
You really can. So the author outlines a highly specific relational model, and it's actually based on how Jesus structured his ministry.
Okay.
It operates in these concentric circles of human capital. At the absolute center is the One. This represents your foundational relationship with God, the anchor of the whole endeavor.
Right, the core.
And then moving outward, you have the 72.
And the 72 are the broader network, right?
Yeah.
These are people who generally resonate with your vision. They might read your newsletter, attend an event, or just cheer you on from the sideline.
Exactly. Then moving inward from there, you narrow it down to the 12.
Okay, the 12.
These are your committed supporters. The people actively invested in the trenches with you. They're acting as prayer partners, financial backers, or direct collaborators.
The team doing the heavy lifting.
Right. And finally, the innermost human circle is the 3. These are your closest, most trusted advisors, mentors, and confidants.
These are circles.
The people who can actually look at you and tell you when you're making a massive mistake.
You know, looking at this 172-12-3 model, I realize this is the exact architecture of modern social media.
Oh, really? How so?
Think about your own phone right now. You have your broad followers or your LinkedIn connections, right? Those are your 72.
Okay.
Then you have your mutuals, the people you actually text and interact with regularly. That's your 12. And then you have your close friends story on Instagram, that tiny circle that sees the real, unfiltered, messy version of you. That's your 3.
Oh, wow. That is a perfect modern equivalent.
Right. But instead of using the psychological structure to just, post vacation photos, the framework uses it for deeply meaningful life building.
It's an incredibly effective way to organize a community around a shared mission. But the source includes this highly memorable, almost funny anecdote about how to handle these relationships once you've actually formed them.
Oh, I love this part.
So the author poses a hypothetical scenario. Imagine your grand vision. The thing you want to build to solve a world need is a vibrant cornfield.
Okay, a cornfield.
But the people who actually show up in your circles,
Sure.
your 72, your 12, they turn out to be mushroom growers. What do you do?
Most leaders, especially in the corporate world, would say, hey, thanks for coming, but I need corn farmers.
Exactly.
Or worse, they would hand the mushroom growers a bunch of corn seeds and try to force them to change their entire nature just to fit the company line.
And the text argues that doing that destroys the very purpose you were trying to build. You do not reject the people who show up, and you do not force them to change. Instead, you build dark rooms for the mushrooms.
Build dark rooms for the mushrooms. I love that so much.
It fundamentally redefines leadership. True purpose isn't about rigidly forcing everyone into the exact mold of your preconceived vision.
Right.
It's about adapting your environment to empower the unique God-given skills of the people who are brought into your ecosystem. You allow them to pursue the things that delight their hearts, and you just trust that it will somehow elevate the shared mission.
Okay, so we have the internal vision and we have the external people. We have the dark rooms. But this brings us right back to the fear we talked about at the very beginning with Timo and Tonia.
Ah, the fear of burnout.
Yes. How do we protect this beautiful, thriving new ecosystem from becoming a nightmare of burnout? How do we stop it from just consuming our lives?
Well, that leads us right to the mechanism of time stewardship.
Okay, time stewardship.
This is where the framework gets ruthlessly practical. The author points out a harsh reality. Time is the only truly finite resource you possess.
Yeah, it's very true.
Billionaire or broke, you receive exactly 168 hours a week. That is your baseline income.
168 hours. And the text insists that just like you would use a zero-based financial budget to track every dollar of your money, you absolutely need a zero-based life budget to track every single one of those 168 hours.
Every single hour.
Every hour needs an assignment. They base this on what they call the principle of permanence and refer to the biblical parable of the 10 minas, which really emphasizes strict accountability for how your time is invested.
The psychological shift of zero-based budgeting is that it visually forces you to acknowledge limits.
Because you can't just keep adding tasks, right?
Exactly. If you add something, you have to subtract something else. There's no magical extra hour. So they structure this time budget into 3 concentric circles.
Okay, walk us through the circles.
The innermost circle, the absolute non-negotiable foundation, is your private life. They list 4 investments here: spiritual well-being, physical well-being, emotional well-being, and explicitly listed as priority number 1, restorative sleep.
Wait, let's pause right here. Prioritizing sleep as number 1.
I know it sounds counterintuitive.
It does. If I'm listening to this and I'm deeply driven to help people, or I'm trying to solve a massive global crisis, penciling in a nap feels incredibly selfish. It feels like I'm ignoring the need out there.
And the author expertly dismantles that exact guilt. The text states a really profound truth. A depleted steward is a diminished steward.
Oh, wow.
It delves into the psychology and theology of limits. Guarding your private life, rigorously protecting your 8 hours of sleep, avoiding what the corporate world calls scope creep. These aren't selfish acts.
Right.
They are the absolute prerequisites for sustainable long-term impact. If you burn out in 6 months, you are completely useless to the mission. You cannot pour from an empty cup.
That is such a crucial reframe. So once you have budgeted for sleep and private health, you move to the second circle, which is immediate family.
Right.
And the text is very strict about this. It is strictly your spouse, your dependent children, and your aging parents. It's the immediate caregiving you cannot outsource.
Yes.
Interestingly, extended family, cousins, and friends actually belong in the next category.
Which is the third circle, public life. This is the time left over where you make your external impact, whether through paid work, volunteering, or ministry.
The outward-facing stuff.
Exactly. And they break this public life down into 3 overlapping actions: doing the work, administering the work, and equipping others for the work.
Okay.
And the text heavily emphasizes that equipping others, like training those mushroom growers, is the most multiplying investment of your remaining hours.
Okay, so we've just walked through an incredibly intense, rigorous framework. You audit your past memories, filter the joy from the pain, match it to a global need, build a multi-tiered relational network, and use zero-based budgeting for every hour of your week.
That's a lot.
It is a lot. It sounds amazing in a textbook, but does it actually work for a real human being facing a transition?
Well, to prove this isn't just theory, the document shares the author's own striking real-world application.
Yes, this part was wild to me.
The author opens up about experiencing what he calls a delayed midlife crisis.
Okay, delayed midlife.
Only this crisis hit him when he was approaching 80 years old.
80.
Yeah, he felt this creeping sense of discontent, the temptation to just slide into a life of idle living, golf, and leisure was overwhelming.
I mean, at 80, most people would say you've earned it, right?
Sure, but his wife steps in with a fairly brutal but necessary warning.
Good for her.
She tells him that if he gives in to that apathy, he's going to slide into laziness and physical atrophy. She points out his family history of cardiac and autoimmune issues.
Oh, wow.
She's basically warning him that for him, idle living is a death sentence. She reminds him of a role model in their lives, a man named Ernst Lafont, who stayed incredibly vibrant in his later years, and she challenges her husband to find a new vision.
Okay, so forced to practice what he preaches, he starts looking at the world map of needs. He attends a conference led by a pastor, Reg Andrews, and discovers this massive hidden sociological crisis right in his own community. Informal caregivers.
Yeah, this is a huge deal.
It is. These are the unpaid individuals caring for chronically ill family members. And the text notes that these informal caregivers make up a staggering 25% of the community.
That's a quarter of the population.
Right. The numbers are growing rapidly, the burnout rate is astronomical, and yet they're completely untrained and largely ignored by formal healthcare institutions.
So seeing this massive need, the author then looks backward at his own ones, his historical joy and strengths. He actually uses the Gallup Strengths Finder assessment to get granular data on himself.
Oh, I've taken that.
Most people have in a corporate setting. So the assessment identifies his top traits as maximizer, analytical, achiever, and communicator.
Okay.
Looking at that data, he realizes his role isn't to be a primary caregiver himself. His role is to be a catalyst and a resource builder.
So what does this all mean? To me, it shows that corporate tools like StrengthsFinder aren't just, HR buzzwords here. In this framework, they are specific tools in a tool belt. The author didn't just grab a generic hammer and start swinging wildly at the caregiver crisis. He used his exact maximizer and achiever tools to engineer a highly specific, customized solution.
And then he applies the relational architecture. He intentionally asks God for 12 prayer partners, his committed supporters, to back this vision.
Okay.
He ends up with 28.
Wow, 28.
Yeah, and this foundation of human capital directly results in the launch of an entirely new platform, caregiverscommunity.ca.
At 80 years old.
At 80.
He is pouring 40 budgeted hours a week into this vibrant, massive new calling.
It is the ultimate irony and honestly the ultimate proof of concept. by submitting to a highly structured, rigorous framework of self-reflection and incredibly strict time management, an 80-year-old man unlocked the energy, vitality, and drive of a Silicon Valley startup founder.
That is unbelievable.
It proves unequivocally that purpose has no expiration date.
What an incredible journey we have unpacked today. We started with the paralyzing, dizzying fear of the blank slate in the freedom years.
Which is so real.
We learned the mechanics of how to actually audit our raw memories to find the ones that spark genuine joy. We talked about building a relational architecture and remembering to build dark rooms for the mushroom growers in your life.
Yes, protect the mushrooms.
We discussed the psychological necessity of zero-based budgeting your finite 168 hours a week, and why putting sleep first is actually the opposite of selfish.
Absolutely crucial.
And we saw how remaining open to this rigorous process can lead to a vibrant, life-saving new calling, whether you are 25, 51, or 80.
You know, the framework gives you the map and the compass, but the terrain you navigate is entirely your own life.
I love that. So whether you are listening to this on your commute, prepping for a big meeting, or you're sitting at home rethinking your entire career path, or you are just fiercely curious about how to optimize your time, remember this. Your 168 hours this coming week are a completely fresh deposit.
Completely fresh.
You have the power to sit down with a journal, categorize your past 1s, 2s, and 3s, and figure out exactly how to spend that time starting today.
But before we wrap up, there is one lingering, somewhat provocative question inspired by this text that I really think you should mull over on your own this week.
Okay, let's hear it.
We spent a lot of time today talking about the ones, those joyful, delightful memories that indicate your strengths. But what if you looked really closely at your threes?
The painful memories.
Right, those painful, uncomfortable, deeply difficult memories. What if those very moments of deep discomfort were actually the precise, customized training ground, uniquely equipping you to solve a specific crisis you haven't even discovered yet?
Wow. That completely shifts how you look at the darkest seasons of your life.
It changes everything.
It really does. If sudden life transitions are like stepping off a high-speed treadmill, maybe the stumbles, the falls, and the scraped knees are exactly what teach us how to finally walk on solid ground.
Beautifully said.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep asking the hard questions, keep auditing your 1s and your 3s, and keep exploring. We will catch you next time.